Welcome to Exhibit A. Today we are going to talk about the divorce of Kevin Costner. With us is Brooke Mulligan.
Hello.
You're going to hear a lot of details that will give you a little bit of an education as to how divorces play out, because this one touches on just about everything. Stay tuned. Hey, Brooke, how are you?
I am well. How are you?
Good. Here we are. It's July.
It is somehow July. It's almost the middle of July.
Yeah, as everybody always says, the year's going so fast and blah, 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 and stuff. But I could tell you one thing that's new is the heat is on.
The heat is here. Well, to drive home, I drive sometimes through the valley, and it was 99 degrees going through there. Luckily, where I live, it was only 86, but still.
Yeah, I think that I complain a lot about the weather getting too warm, but right here in Pasadena, it's not as bad as like Van Nuys.
Oh, right. Yeah. That's where it was, exactly.
And I look at the rest of the country, except for the north, of course, but the south is just baking right now. It makes us look like paradise, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, we look like paradise most of the time, but especially now.
Don't rub it in now. So we are going to talk about some celebrity stories.
Yes.
And I have no clue what you're going to talk about today. So
Perfect.
This is going to be great.
Okay, so we're just going to talk about the Kevin Costner divorce.
Do I want to hear this? Wait a minute. Before you begin, you know which movie that or the Netflix show or whatever that is?
Oh, you like Yellowstone?
Yellowstone. Is that on Netflix or it's not Netflix?
It's not Netflix, but it is a very popular show. I have not watched it, so I don't know.
Okay.
But I know people like it. And it has spin-off shows, too.
Yeah. The thing that's going to kill me about this is that despite everybody saying that Kevin Costner has an attitude, that he's an actor that you don't want to work with and stuff, I was really liking him in this. You haven't seen it at all?
I have not, but I have to tell you, I'm coming from the opposite side, just based on.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's good. We are balanced.
Okay.
Here.
All right.
So we were supposed to do this podcast a little bit ago, and so I've updated it. But I thought it would be interesting to kind of go through the case without giving the ending away, because it has been pretty complicated. It's been very much in the news. A lot of information has been coming out, so that's how I'm going to try to present it to you.
Okay. When you say that this case, it sounds like it's almost finished.
I think they're long. I mean, they haven't even found whether or not the prenup is valid, but it started and there was a lot in the beginning. So maybe it's front loaded. So we have Kevin Costner, an actor, and Christine Baumgartner. They were married in 2004. The date of the divorce filing was May 1st, and the date of separation is a little bit contested. She said April 11th, and he said to be determined.
As far as the date of separation?
Yes.
So she's saying that it was April 11th of 2023.
Yes.
Okay.
And there are 3 minor children, a 13-year-old, a 14-year-old, and a 15 or 16-year-old. I was getting different ages, so maybe he had a birthday while this case has been happening. The biggest issues, at least initially, have been the Carpinteria house and child support.
They have a house in Carpinteria?
Oh, get ready, Don. They also have a house in Aspen, which is a 12-bedroom, 8-bathroom house on 160 acres.
Ooh.
And it's currently available for rent for $36,000 a night.
Okay. I won't be going over there anytime soon.
Well, if, maybe our next retreat. It was described as an $80 million mini town in many of the articles I read. I saw some pictures. It looks very beautiful.
Wow.
It would have to be, I would think,
Yeah.
for that price. But the main issue is the family home, which is in Carpinteria.
Wait, Carpinteria is the house that's right next to Montecito, or the city that's right next to Montecito.
Yeah, it's up there.
So I go to Santa Barbara a lot, and when I pass through Carpinteria, I don't see like mega mansions over there. Well, so it must be kind of like on the border of Montecito or something.
It could be. I didn't see it on the on a map, but it's right on the water, and so maybe you're missing it.
Yeah.
But he owned a home there, the same home, and it was bought before marriage. And then in 2006, which is 2 years after the marriage, he bought a nearby home and / land, and he sort of combined the properties after selling part of the new land he bought, about 7 acres. They being the tabloid, so I don't know how true this is. They say it's worth $145 million.
Well, this is prime real estate in Southern California, along the beach.
Oh, and it's gorgeous.
It's got to be, yeah. And it's got to be very expensive.
Yes.
So
this is where the family has lived for a very long time. She is the primary parent and has been for a long time. He does a lot of shooting for your Yellowstone show, and he's gone a lot. And his position is that the home is owned solely by him because it was purchased before marriage. We know that it's presumed to be separate if it's bought before marriage, but there could be some reimbursement issues. And surprise, surprise, the tabloids I was reading did not get into the characterization of the land he bought and where that money came from.
Well, they would have to kind of understand community property law and how people could possibly have community interest in separate property, right?
Exactly. And so he says that the other property he bought and he combined, that property is solely for editing. So they took that house and made it into, the editing bay. And the last thing I want to say as kind of background is he is allegedly worth $250 million, which,
seems a little low for celebrities these days. Isn't like that Morton Downey guy? He was worth. So Kevin Costner's been around a long time.
I know. This was just like little footnotes I read that he had taken out some loans on the house to film some movies he wanted to do. So maybe he's a little, he's over leveraged or something like that. But yeah, if you're looking at the $145 million first home and then the $80 million mini town, that's more than that's close to 250. So anyway, we don't know exactly.
So a good forensic accountant is going to need to be hired.
Definitely. And the next big issue is that there is a prenup. Kevin Costner was married before he married Christine.
Now we know why he's only worth $250 million. The ex-wife owns the other $250 million.
Yeah,
so go ahead.
And I guess during that divorce, he lost the house, or he lost the use of their house for a time. And so when he entered into this marriage, he was very firm about the prenup and had a portion of the prenup say that he was to move out of his properties within 30 days and Kevin would provide her with $1.2 million to find a new home. Now,
so she was supposed to move out upon the date of filing?
Date of filing,
okay.
Yes.
My guess is she hasn't moved out yet.
She has not moved out yet. Here I want to just say that they entered into this prenup, and this isn't an excuse, but $1.2 million in 2004 is very different from $1.2 million now, especially to buy a home in Carpinteria. You still have the minor children. You don't want to move them to a lower cost of living area.
You're absolutely right.
So I think that's where she's coming from.
$1.2 million in that area will get you a small bungalow.
Yeah.
And the family's accustomed to living
exactly
in a grand fashion.
And she has the 3 children, and it's clear that she will be doing a lot of the caretaking. He didn't finish filming his latest project until I believe it was July 7th or something. So throughout this whole process, the kids have mostly been with her.
Okay, so far in your analysis, you seem to be on the wife's side. You were telling me that this is going to go the opposite direction. So when do we start liking Kevin Costner?
Oh, no, I'm not saying that.
Okay.
I am trying to be...
Are you trying to be a neutral reporter?
I am trying to be... It's coming out, but I will try to be clear, or less biased.
All right, go ahead. Throw it in.
And so he said that he quoted the language in the premarital agreement, and he also, this was in a filing, he asks that the details of the PMA be put under seal, because it would put him under risk of irreparable harm from fraudsters or burglars and attract unwanted and embarrassing global attention.
Okay, let's stop for a second there. What's he really referring to within the premarital agreement?
Well, I'm a little confused.
I'll tell you what it is. It's his attachment. Attachment A. It's got all of his assets, debts, his bank accounts. There's probably some account numbers that are there. I mean, he's got kind of a point to the extent that he doesn't want that in, but and that stuff wouldn't become public record if he settles the case like most celebrities do or does private judging, right? So he's saying keep that out of the record. However, he might not be able to do so because of the fact that if they start litigating the validity of the premarital agreement, and she says, aha, I got you because you didn't disclose some material assets here. So, Judge, I want you to look at A and mark this in. Interesting.
Well, I also think it's interesting that this is the same filing, if I'm understanding correctly, where he is including language from the prenup and then in the same filing saying, but I want everything under seal. And it feels a little pick and choosy to me. He wants the benefits of sealing it and the benefits of celebrity, but then he also wants to be able to put his position out. It's been everywhere if you're, reading celebrity things, this language, and she's being painted as someone who is not moving out because she wants to make financial demands and basically kind of extorting him. So.
Yeah. What year were they married?
2004.
Okay. So that would have been right after the Premarital Agreement Act was modified. After the Bonds case, right?
Yeah.
And so we know that the law was tightened up during that time to the extent that, in my view, if attorneys are doing their job the right way, premarital agreements are pretty solid. They're contract law. You have to have a full disclosure of all the assets. Mm-hmm. You have to deal with each other in a fair way. It's not a fiduciary duty until you get married. But both parties should have their own attorneys. I'm sure she had her own attorney.
Yeah.
There wasn't any duress or anything like that. So we don't know anything about claims of duress, which would probably be her best defense. I'm only going to guess that Costner got himself a good family law attorney.
I would think so.
Yeah, who drafted it, and there's probably good disclosures that are on there, but we don't know yet, right?
We don't know. And this I will spoil. We will not know how the court rules on the validity of the prenup until November. That's when it's set to be heard. But we know that things get continued or settled. So
Where's it filed?
It's up in Santa Barbara.
Ooh, I love that courthouse.
I mean, should we?
I'm trying to get a branch office over there.
I can help oversee that. One of the other things he brings up in his initial filing, I believe it was his initial filing, was that she splurged $95,000 on his credit card. And has a restraining order against him.
Whoa. That first part, what? The splurge, what?
She splurged $35,000 on his credit card.
Right. This guy's worth $250 million. Mm-hmm. She's got 3 of his children. He's like the biggest thing out there right now. He's conceivably he's at the peak of his career, and he could double that money very quickly. And he's worried about her spending on his credit card.
Well, and he says it's his credit card. It seems like it could be a joint credit card, and he says without prior notice, which feels a little, controlling.
Splurging, at that level of wealth, that's like you and me going over to the 7-Eleven getting a Slurpee.
Yes.
I mean,
Well, my boyfriend does like me to ask first. No, I'm just kidding. And once you hear this, I don't know how you'll feel, but the money went to her hiring an attorney and a forensic accountant.
Oh, well, that's fair game.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. What would a divorce like that cost if it was contested? You're talking about millions of dollars.
Oh, right.
So she goes out and gets a retainer of, let's say, 20, 30, 40,000. That's not unheard of.
Right. And she needs the forensic accountant,
right.
Definitely.
Right.
And then he also claims that because she will not move out, he is effectively homeless.
Come on.
We had the world's saddest violin come out for that.
Wait a minute. This is surfacing in pleadings?
Yes.
That he's going to be homeless?
Yes, because she won't move out.
Okay. There's certain things you just don't put in declarations, and some of them are the absurd statements. Mm-hmm. Come on, man.
Well, he has this, Aspen home, a mini town. Maybe it's rented out, but I'm sure there's something that can be done. You have a lot of money at your disposal, and he is still filming the show at the time of this filing. He, in a subsequent filing, says that he won't be home until I think it was July 7th. So he's not homeless.
I'm sorry, but this is ridiculous. I don't know who the attorney is, and I'm not going to badmouth anybody, but that would never surface in one of our declarations. No. I mean, if you're representing somebody that's that wealthy, you need, like every other client, you need to have credibility with the court. You don't put absurd things in there. I mean, it's silly.
Yes, I agree. The last thing he said in this filing was that she, being Christine, was happy to benefit from the premarital agreement for years, but now isn't abiding by it. And he says that she was benefiting from it because she got $100,000 on the wedding day and $100,000 on the first anniversary. And then she also got $1 million after filing for the divorce, which he says he's paid to her, and this was part of the prenup. But she says that she won't take it because then it would, make it impossible for her to challenge the validity of the prenup.
I don't know if that's true.
That is her position.
Yeah. Okay. Again, I question that. I mean, you could accept money and still say, yeah, thank you, unless she signs a release. If they're demanding, hey, you can take this, but you have to sign saying that this is it. So right now I'm kind of thinking if I'm her attorney, right? And I'm thinking, you probably are going to have a hard time with the validity of the premarital agreement. I doubt that there was duress, unless you never know. I mean, you just don't. But her thing is spousal support. I mean, there's got to be an argument that it'd be unconscionable, right?
Well, so Don, you're jumping ahead a little bit. But I mean, I guess I am persuaded by this argument. If you think about contracts, and once you basically, she would be accepting the terms of the contract by taking the $1 million as outlined in the prenup, and so I think that would hurt her ability to contest the prenup at a later date.
My feeling is it depends on what's said during the passing of money.
Well,
if he wrote her a check and she put it in the bank without anything else said, I'd be like, what? I'm used to getting money from this guy. He owes it to me.
Well, he automatically transferred it, or he transferred it into her bank account. So I don't know if language goes along with those transfers, but I do think it's clear, based on his language in his filing, saying she was happy to benefit from the prenup. I gave her $1 million. I think it shows what kind of argument would be made.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So maybe they're just being overly cautious.
Well, they're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
They're complying with the terms of the premarital agreement. And like I said, nowadays these things are more enforceable than ever. As much as I love the wife and he's starting to look kind of bad to me, that agreement most likely is going to be enforceable, except for provisions like, spousal support, or if there's any sign of duress when she signed it.
Well, so that brings up a question for me. And I agree that I think the prenup is probably valid.
We're just guessing right now.
Yes, we're just guessing. And I haven't seen the prenup, but this is just based on who, it seemed like he had a real hard time in his first divorce, so I would think his prenup here would be very, by the book. He has a very well-known attorney representing him now. But $1.2 million is not going to allow her to care for the children in the lifestyle that they're accustomed to. They're not going to be able to get this a massive house or even a large house in the area where the kids have grown up for $1.2 million.
So then we get back to a recent appellate court decision regarding conscionability of spousal support orders, right?
Okay, well,
because are you talking about property or talking about spousal support?
Either, I guess. Just basically, where's this woman supposed to go to take care of the children in a lifestyle that they're accustomed to?
Okay, let's address that, because there's actually 3 issues with that. Number one is property doesn't really, you can't ask a court to find a premarital agreement unenforceable based upon conscionability, right?
Right.
I mean, it's a transaction.
It's a contract, right?
It's a contract, right. There is unconscionability provisions with regard to spousal support, and we also know that child support cannot be addressed in a premarital agreement. So those 3 different things. You're feeling bad for her because she's used to this standard of living, which might go to the spousal support and the conscionability. But what about the child support as well? I mean, child support, we have an extraordinarily high income earner, and she could expect a lot of child support. It's not going to be guideline child support, but it's going to be a lot of child support too, right?
So that is one of the updates. There was a hearing on July 7th that discusses child support, so I'll get there.
Okay.
And then, so this is, going back, he says that he made these offers. He agrees to pay her mortgage and insurance costs for the first year of a new place. He will pay the children's expenses, and he says he has been and will continue to do so. He will contribute $30,000 a month for a rental house and $10,000 for moving cost, and she can use his staff. And then he will pay $38,000 per month total to Christine as and for additional child support.
3 kids. It seems a little low to me.
Seems very low to me.
Yeah.
She is seeking $250,000 a month in child support.
Right now.
Yay. She says it is less than the amount needed to maintain the children in their accustomed lifestyle.
Okay, come on now.
Says with documents that he has earned approximately $19.5 million in 2022.
Okay, so let's talk about child support there, or spousal support. You have to look at whether the income is going to continue, right? The court can't just say, well, you had a good year and this here, and we're going to say that you're going to have that. Because the court has to look in the future.
Right.
It could use the past as a gauge as to what's going to be earned in the future. But if he gets done with the show, and what I heard, unfortunately, is he's not going to be returning to the show. And of course, you're going to say, well, Don, wasn't that voluntary on his part?
Well, that is interesting because the show, as far as I know, is going to continue without him. I don't know how much longer, but I would wonder what the court would do with that if you voluntarily left a show. Yeah. I don't know what you do with that, because if it were a more traditional job and you quit your job as being a doctor, the court would say, no, if you're not at retirement age or older, you need to be working. And so it's interesting.
Well, he's at retirement age.
I guess that's true.
But is he retired?
He's not retired.
He's not retired. He's not likely to retire. This guy loves doing what he does. I think he's got some other projects that were going. That was one of the reasons for leaving the what's the name of the show again?
Yellowstone,
the one that I love so much I can't even think of. So he wants to walk away from that when the rest of the world is going, please stay, but he's got other projects.
Yes.
So he's not retiring anytime soon.
No.
So the court can't say that support's going to be reduced to zero because Kevin's over the age of 65 and he gets to retire.
He gets to retire, but if you don't.
Yeah, well, you're right. He gets to retire, but he hasn't retired.
Yes.
Okay.
And then on June 8th, and I'm a little bit confused about this filing, and I think maybe it was just someone writing that that doesn't know family law, but she files for a restraining order to forbid him from taking the children out of state and transferring or selling any properties. But we know that the ATROs, the automatic temporary restraining orders, are already in place.
There's already restraining orders in place.
Right, which would prevent him from transferring.
All of that.
Everything. So I'm not sure. Maybe I'm not sure what happened there. But on June 9th, he files a request for order to kick her out of the house, calling a preliminary injunction prohibiting petitioner from occupancy.
This sounds very, very heated. I'm going to tell you, man, these filings that are going back and forth, I mean, this is all emotion, raw emotion. It has nothing really to do with common sense, legal analysis, or anything like that.
No, and remember,
trying to kick her out of the house. Good luck with that.
Yes. And so he says he will finish shooting in Utah around June 24th and be back June 25th or 26th.
And he expects her gone and the kid's gone.
And he needs to be in the Carpinteria house because of the attached editing office that I told you about.
Okay, how many acres on this?
I don't know the acreage of the Carpinteria house.
Why don't we get him a big RV, man, and just have him park on the other side of the 70-acre,
I think we can figure something out.
The beach house.
And then he says, and I thought if this was actually how it was written, and I'm not sure if it was, but it is interesting because he also says that the children will not be affected by Christine moving out, as he sees them having 50-50 custody, so there's little change. Well, I mean, there is a big change, even 50% of the time being with mom in a different house. I mean, that's a change regardless.
So he's one of these guys that he's in his late 60s, and he's got a crazy successful career, and he's going to also be a great dad by having 50% custody.
Yes.
He must be more of a man than I am.
I would not be able to do that.
No. Okay.
Then one little thing that I just wanted to mention so our listeners know not to do this. Christine says that Kevin told the children about the divorce over Zoom. So clients, please don't do that.
Yeah. Especially since Zoom can be recorded. Anything you say can and will be used against you in the court of law.
Just don't do that. But some good news. Custody does not seem to be an issue. They have both requested joint custody.
Well, wait. I thought you said he wants 50% custody.
He does.
And she's going to be okay with that?
It's unclear. They both at least have said joint. But we know that joint can mean a lot of different things.
Right.
But it's better than, them asking for sole. And it's harder to get to the middle from the extremes. And she is not seeking spousal support. And I wasn't able to see if that's because I don't know why that is. I don't think that's the right move. But I would think she has good representation, so maybe there's a reason there. I'm not sure.
Is she really contesting the premarital agreement?
Yes. There's a hearing in November. Maybe she doesn't want spousal support now. I don't know. I was a little confused by this one because that's where she's going to get, the most support.
Or the possibility. I mean, let's say there's a provision in there that she shall not get spousal support because he's paid her $1 million or blah, blah, blah. That's where she's got some leeway. She could possibly contest that issue. Yeah. And you're right. That should be on the table. Yeah.
So, again, like I said, I am not reading the actual pleadings, and I'm relying on reporters who may not know this as well.
We are just speculating,
We're just speculating. But I did think that was odd. And then I was going to end this when we were originally going to do it to say that I did one of those inflation calculators to show that $1.2 million in 2004 is almost $2 million in 2023 dollars. But we're not done yet because a lot has happened. Christine filed something saying that she will leave the Carpinteria house by August 31st if he pays support fees as ordered by the court. And she says that I'm quoting what she said. He wants me to rent a place without a financial plan in place. However, I have our 3 children to think about. It is contrary to their best interest to commit to a rental that I may not be able to afford, particularly as that would ultimately lead to multiple relocations. So it seems like they are coming a little bit closer. She says she'll move as long as he abides by whatever support order is ordered by the court.
He may not really want her to move. I don't know who's the petitioner in this case.
She's the petitioner.
Yeah, so, be careful what you ask for, right? Because now she's saying, okay, I'll move. And it's like, but I can't control you anymore.
What am I going to do?
Yeah, so it's kind of ugly. I mean, you think about, here's this guy with this massive amount of property, a huge house, and everybody's gone, and stuff. So, I wonder if he really wants that.
We'll see. Then we got another update. So remember, she's asking for about $250,000 in child support. And he says that her request is completely inappropriate and includes funding for her plastic surgery. I think they filled out an INE, an income and expense declaration, and that was part of the bills somehow. I don't think it said plastic surgery, but
it's a low blow.
It's a little low blow.
If she's asking for $250,000, it's probably less than guideline, is my guess.
I would think so.
But even if it is, she has a right to ask and then start bargaining it down.
Exactly.
I mean, what we should know, this is not about extraordinarily high earners. We've had those podcasts in the past, and maybe in the future we'll have some more. But what the court's going to do in a case like this and say, what is the typical income in Santa Barbara or Ventura County? Okay, now we take a guy that's got $250,000. That's an extraordinarily high income earner without a doubt. We're not going to order guidelines child support because that's absurd. Children don't need $1 million a month, to be supported. However, because of the lifestyle of these people and what a child of somebody like that is entitled to, private schools, maybe horses, all the fancy
whatever they do.
Yeah. So we're going to give more than the typical child support, but it's not going to be guideline. And what we've seen in the cases here in LA, that when people maybe the incomes are about $4 million a year or something like that, then we started getting into that area, and we would start off with a support order of $10,000-$20,000 a month per child. So Costner, when he's saying that he wants to pay $40,000 a month in child support, he's probably not being realistic there either. So you get these two extremes. One wants guideline, the other one wants to kind of short end it. I'll bet you. I'm not going to bet you because I'll probably lose. But it'll probably be somewhere in between is where it'll be.
I will get there. We do have an answer here.
Oh, okay.
So, yes, he's now saying, so he has upped his proposal to about $52,000 in child support.
Okay.
And then, of course, she responds and says that's, really wildly inappropriate, and he spends $240,000 a month on himself and the kids when they're with him. So, good arguments all around.
Kevin, you got to offer $75,000.
This is a question I wanted to ask you. So TMZ reports that Christine will also be forced to return the $1.5 million paid to her by Costner if the judge determines that the prenup is valid, and she will also reportedly be forced to pay his attorney's fees for defending the document. I wrote that before I read a little bit more. So there's a provision in the premarital agreement that's
prevailing party.
Exactly, which I think is really interesting. Because you should be able to, I don't know, I'm of two minds, but she has no income. He has, a huge net worth, and she's going to be forced to pay his attorney's fees. I don't know. It's just it's interesting.
Well, how strong do you feel about your position, ma'am? Sir, I mean, he could pay her fees, no problem.
Right.
On the other hand, she would have a hard time, possibly. I mean, she's still going to walk away with some assets and everything. I don't know anything about her. Is she an actress?
I'm not sure what she did before, but she's been a stay-at-home mom for a very long time.
I wonder what her background is. Did she come from a middle-class family? Does she come from high wealth? Mm-hmm. I mean, those things are going to factor into her decision-making as to, all issues here. Mm-hmm. If she comes from a modest background, like most of us, to go back into a regular neighborhood with a house that's worth a couple $1 million. That's not shocking.
Yes.
To me, it isn't.
No.
But it depends on who she is.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and then we have our last update. So there was a hearing on, I believe it was July 7th, and child support was ordered at $129,755 for all.
Say that again. How much?
$129,000 essentially. Oh, almost $130,000.
That's child support?
Child support.
So I was right then. It's somewhere in the
you
middle.
were right.
Then. Okay.
And there's subject to reallocation at a later date.
See, if you would have followed my advice and paid $75,000, he might have gotten it lower, but he's being greedy and going only up to $50,000.
Yeah.
And that's actually, of course, I'm joking because I've never had a conversation with the man, but people need to understand that when you're negotiating, don't take extreme positions, make concessions. Try to make it work, because if you give it to the judge, it could be a lot higher than what you were offering or what they might have accepted.
Yes.
Right.
And then she's also ordered to vacate the home by July 31st or July 30th.
So it did go in front of a judge, and the judge ordered it vacated. I don't really like those rulings, and I'll tell you why, Brooke. It's a separate property, but it's a family residence.
Yes.
And until things are resolved, let's keep the kids comfortable, and stuff.
Agree.
And, this thing about this property, you and I had a case down in Torrance, as you know, where the wife and who was our client and is our client, and kids are living in the separate property of the father. The parties were never married.
Yeah, she's not the wife, she's the mother.
Yeah, that's right. They were never married. And she's a victim of domestic violence. And she was working for his business, not getting paid for years. And suddenly, they have to live apart. He gets knocked out of the house because he can't be there because he's committed domestic violence. So then the complaint is, but she's living in my property. She needs to be out of there, blah, 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 right? I just think that, in our case, the court eventually kind of had her move out.
Mm-hmm.
I think, what judges should do is especially when there's children there, is let's take our time in getting her out of the house.
I agree.
I mean, you're talking about an enormously disruptive scenario with a family, and stuff. And it's the same thing here. Now I don't know if she went kicking and screaming. Maybe the judges, maybe they stipulated in court. They could have gone in there and said, you know what, we'll move out by such and such date. They made it part of the order.
Well, I think that could have happened in other cases. In this one, I do think that it was ordered by the judge because she had previously agreed to move out August 31st. What is the harm in allowing her a little bit more time? If this hearing, I believe, was on July 7th or July 8th, it was very recent, and she now has less than a month.
But did her attorneys go in objecting to that, or was it a kind of a judge, go ahead and order her out because she's got plans?
I think they said to order her out on August 31st.
Okay.
And then the other order is that they will split the expenses for the children down the middle, including the private school tuition as well as their extracurricular activities.
Oh, come on.
Which I really found fault with. I don't understand the reasoning there. Why would Kevin not be paying for
all of it.
Everything?
Yeah.
Especially the private school tuition. I cannot imagine it is inexpensive up there to send children to private school.
Wow. I mean, 3 kids, private school. We know that here in Pasadena, in schools that we all know, and we're talking about, believe it or not, hold on to your seat, folks, if you don't live over here, you could be sending your kid to a first grade private school and spending $30,000, $40,000. I mean, and that's not the most expensive ones out here.
No.
So you got 3 kids in Santa Barbara. I don't know, if it's more or less over here, but you're probably talking about per year close to $100,000 a year.
Definitely, and I think that's on the lower end because the children are at least 8th grade at the youngest, and maybe
and she's got to split half of that?
Yes.
Yeah.
These
are just temporary orders, though.
Temporary orders, yes.
Okay.
And Costner has incurred additional expenses because the judge ordered him to pay $200,000 for her attorney's fees,
Yay!
along with an additional $100,000 for forensic costs.
Still, again, for a case of that magnitude, that's not unreasonable at all.
No.
People might be like, $200,000. Hey, believe me. I mean, that case, if it became litigated, you're talking about $5 million.
Yeah. I think maybe the court is sending a signal that, once we figured out the prenup.
Premarital agreement, you're right about that, yeah.
And then she asked for all the payments. This is a very small point, but she asked for the payments to be done via automatic transfer to ensure their timeliness, and the court said no. I just thought it was an odd thing to say no to. Yeah. I don't know the reasoning there. We have, those systems in place, through the government. So I didn't see the reasoning there. They didn't give any reasoning. Just a little point. And then he has now requested, there's another hearing on August 2nd, for Christine to pay about $100,000 in his legal fees. So I have not read the pleading, as I've said, but I don't understand. I don't know if they're trying to argue that almost arguing prevailing party fees.
You know what's
early?
going on, Brooke? You know what's going on here? I'm just guessing again. I'm not there. I haven't read it. I haven't read one document. So take this with a big grain of salt. But it looks like he's trying to starve her out by just making her spend all of her money on attorney's fees, because what do we know? 2030 of the Family Code is need and ability to pay. Does Costner need money for attorney's fees? No. Does she have the ability to pay his attorney's fees? Probably not, in light of all the other obligations that we've talked about here and stuff. But why is he filing these types of motions?
Because she has to respond.
Yeah. It's kind of like the war of attrition. And here we have a woman that now is being displaced. They're kind of like halfway there. They just have to find the validity of the premarital agreement. He wants to pay attorney's fees. I mean, it could be sanctions. And sanctions, he doesn't have to show ability, but he has to show her. He doesn't have to show his need. He has to show her ability. But I haven't heard anything that's sanctionable yet.
No, and I think he is trying to do an early prevailing party. But why would you just not wait until
prevailing over what though?
Over the prenup of.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Mm-hmm. Because, you've already contested it.
Yes, and so the article I was reading included the language from the prenup about the prevailing party. So what
Costner is saying is, I want $100,000 now. I've already paid my attorneys $100,000 on a contested premarital agreement. We haven't even spent a day in court on that issue. That's interesting. Yeah. How much does he charge per page? I mean,
So, I guess now that I'm looking at the language, the prenup stated that if either party retained counsel to enforce or prevent a breach of the agreement, the prevailing party shall be entitled. Right. So, there's nothing about beforehand or anything.
Okay.
Yeah.
All
right. I think that's an interesting one, but we will have more information, hopefully, or maybe in November. Maybe they'll have settled by now.
Okay. So let's conclude by saying this. Stay tuned. This looks like it's a barn burner of a divorce. This could be something that could be the divorce of the century, but hopefully not, because there's children, there's human beings that are involved. My hope, and my best guess is that they're going to wake up, smell their coffee, and go, hey, let's go to either some private judging, or they're just going to go someplace and settle this thing so that his assets aren't dragged through the public and all the skeletons of the closet, and just, get on with life, man. To take care of that family. So hopefully that's what's going to happen.
We can hope.
Okay, thank you. This was really good. It's very detailed.
Well, there's a lot of details out there, so maybe that'll make them settle more quickly as well.
Absolutely. Okay, well, we'll see you next time on Exhibit A.